Hello everyone, this is Mohammed again with the part 4 of the employee vaccination management systems tutorial. If you have been following me in the last 3 tutorials, you should have something like this by now, and of course you should have this code. In the last video I put the information in GitHub so that you can compare it. Anyway, let's get started. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start adding a little bit of menu right here on the right side, and it will be a drop down menu where we'll have the vaccination types as one of the items in the menu. Okay, so the first thing is, as you know, we have this page right here, index.html, and that is basically a mix of HTML, and we're also using a technology called Thymeleaf and right hand menu. So first thing we're going to do is, of course, go to the next line. We need to add since we want it to be responsive, we need to add a button. So the first thing we're going to do is add a little button here that kind of comes with Bootstrap, and the name of the button would be navbar toggle, or the class rather. So what happens is, the reason we're going to need the button is whenever we resize our window, it automatically shrinks, and then it shows like a hamburger menu, so that you can click on it, and then it shows the drop down with all the list of menu items. Alright, so that's a navbar toggle class that is built in Bootstrap. First, of course, it's a button type. And then there'll be a data toggler, and it would be collapse, so that we can see the menu always. Data target, this is where it's going to say when I click on it, what should it expand or collapse. So we're going to say that there will be another bookmark somewhere on the page called navbar ORTED supported content. Okay, and then this is just basically says that area of the controls would be that piece as well. Just copy this piece. And then it's going to have one more thing a couple of more things. One is area expanded. Spell it. Expanded would be false. And then area dash label would be, just put a label, navigation, and that's kind of it as far as the button goes. Okay, so that's that. Now this button, of course, we want to be a standard toggler button, which we can get from Bootstrap as well. So we're just going to have a little built-in icon that Bootstrap gives us with the class called navbar toggler icon. That's kind of it. There you go. So that's our button. That's basically will take care of our responsiveness and resize it. Now let's create this area that we talked about, that whenever the button is clicked, that area is going to show up. So that area, as we said, of course, is going to be a div. First of all, let's create that. And in the div, this is going to be another navigation drop down menu. So first of all, we're going to say this is going to be a collapsed version of the menu, and then we're going to say navbar dash collapse. These are all built-in Bootstrap classes we're using. And of course, we're going to have an ID. If you recall, the ID that we said that this button is going to control is this area, so we're going to call this that same ID. Okay, and then inside there we're going to have standard HTML bullets. So UL is the list basically, and inside so we're going to use the class that this is going to be a, let's say it's going to be a nav bar, of course, navigation, and I'm going to say ML auto. What that stands for is it's a margin to the left auto. So left margin, make it auto. That's what that means. And then we're going to say text, no wrap. That means do not wrap my text. If it's a longer text, just show it as is. Otherwise, it's going to try to wrap and it's going to look ugly, actually. All right, so inside my bulleted list, my first item is of course going to be my drop-down menu. So since that's a drop-down menu, there's a built-in class called Dropdown. That's what we're going to use. And this, of course, that's the list. Now inside that, of course, we're going to have a link, right? So we're going to have something like this, an anchor object. So there we're going to use standard navigation link class called nav-link, and of course we're going to say drop down dash toggle. That means this is going to be a drop down menu. So and then we're going to have to create, let's just end that tag, otherwise it will, okay, there you go. Then it's going to have an href of, don't worry about anything because it's just going to toggle down and up. And you could say role equal to button. It's kind of going to work like a button. And you can give an ID, of course. I'm just going to call it, or actually call it administration. We're going to call it administration. So call it admin drop-down menu link. Alright, and a couple of more things. We're going to say data toggle. We're going to say this is going to be drop-down. And we're also going to need to do some other stuff like kind of copy these items because they're kind of the same thing. Area expanded false. Okay. Now that's all good. Now what I want to do is I wanted to have something called administration. Okay, so that's good. And kind of coded a lot, so let's see how it looks for now. Save that. Go back to our page. There it is. So the menu appears. Now, of course, this kind of shows up there. We'll figure out what that is. Oh, let's figure out what that is. I think this is supposed to be toggler. So let's go and save this. Go back up there. And there it is. So now if I kind of resize this. Okay, good. So it looks good. So now let's go back, add some more menu items in there. Nothing in there now. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is right after this, let's add a menu item. That would be a div, of course. And inside the div, this would be a class equals drop down menu, of course, and then this is area dash labeled by we're gonna say that this is the ID that is going to be controlling this menu item. Okay, and then inside that it's nothing but just a link. So let's copy this so that we don't have to type the whole thing again. Okay, so there will be a link like that, and this is not going to be this, it will be a drop down item, of course. And then let's remove all of these things. Well, we're gonna call this, let's say, vaccine type. That's the name of our menu item. And href, we want it dynamic, so we use the thyme leaves tag. And then of course we're gonna have something like the script that basically says show this path based on whatever context you have. So that's about it. Alright, let's see how it looks. Refresh this, and okay, we got something, but of course it's kind of dark, so we need to kind of change the color. Let's see how do you fix that. Alright, so let's go to our style sheet. We don't like the normal color, so we gotta go change it to something like light. So we're gonna update or overwrite the drop down item, and we're going to say the color that we're looking for is something a little bit lighter. So that's D5, D5, D5. And you can kind of see how it looks. Putting it on, so it's going to be a little bit like grayish type thing. And then we also wanted to change something like how it's going to look when you hover over it. So that color cannot be dark as well. So we wanted to say drop down item, focus, and also copy that, drop down item, hover. In both of these cases we want a couple of changes. One is the color is going to be a little different. It will be a different color, TEE 2E6. I think that's the color we want, a little bit lighter. Good. And then we want the text decoration, we want that to be bold, of course. It kind of shows up. And then we want the background color to stay the same, of course, which is, I think in our case we said this is going to be dark blue. You can kind of copy this and let's paste that. Alright, so well, let's save that and refresh this. Voila, looks a little better. Nice. Okay, good. Alright, now we're going to add a background image here. So let's get the image first. So how about search for vaccine? Go to images, and it's probably better to go to advanced search. And I typically like to go a little bigger than that size, and of course I want to get into trouble so I can use it for free. Search for that. This one looks good. Let's say click on that, and I'm going to say right click, open image in a new tab. Yeah, it's a big image. Right click, save image as. We need to go to the directory. So it looks like I already have it. I'm in the right directory. So the directory, so I have my projects, then source, main, resources, static images. That's where I'm going to save it. Let's save it as bg dot, it's a JPEG file, JPG. Save that. Alright, done with that. Close all this, come back to our Eclipse. Come back here. Well, first of all, let's refresh this so that it shows up here, kind of. Okay, good. Now there's several ways you could add the background image. Now one way is, of course, you could do it in CSS, but since we want to use the dynamic path, don't want to hardcode anything, so I like to do it in the right here inside the HTML so I can use the dynamic thime leaf tags. So one way to do it is you could just use the thime leaf style tag and basically say that I'm going to have some background image in my style. So of course, first of all, we wanted to use the thime leaf tag to say that this is going to be a background image. Note there is a single quote here because this is kind of like a text that we're going to try to pass as part of the style sheet code. And then you will have this little function thing on CSS called URL. Start of that, and then end single quote and end my scriptlet. So that would just kind of return a little string, and we're going to concatenate that string with our dynamic image tag, which basically says it's going to be in /images /bg.jpg. So that's the path. It will automatically translate that to based on whatever the destination context would be. And then plus we need to end this URL. So we start another little scriptlet tag, and inside what you want to say is you want to end that URL function, of course. So like kind of like that. So that's about it. So that should show our background image. Let's go ahead, save this thing, and go back and look at it. Nice. And that looks good for me. Okay. One thing that maybe we can improve a little bit is this is black. Let's change that to white and let's see how it looks. So let's go back to our style sheet, and I think that was done using H1, so we can change the color of H1 most likely. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and say my H1, the color is white. That's how that looks. Save that, go back here, and there. Okay, it's not too bad. Alright, now I think we pretty much accomplished this nice look and feel. Now we have a nice drop down menu, vaccine type, and then we also have a nice logo on the left side, and we get this table or list. Now one thing that is recommended is you, in a real application, you never hard code these texts. It's always a good idea to put the text in a resource file. The reason behind that is, let's say you wanted to translate this thing into several different languages, and you want that whoever is looking at this page from whatever country, it automatically picks up their local language and automatically translates the web page. So that's why you wanted to put that in a resource file. None of these text messages or languages, you wanted to hard code it. So one way to do it is you add something like a messages resource file. You can call it anything you want, we just have to reference it, whatever you call it, in your application properties. So I want to create a file, and under resource called messages.properties. Right there. And then in application properties file, I'm going to add a line that basically says, hey, I have a message resource file that's called spring.messages.base name is equal to, and Spring automatically understands that it will be a .properties file, and it will look for a file called messages.properties underneath the resources, so it will pick it up automatically. Now, TimeLeaf makes it extremely easy to load the resources. So the first thing we're going to do is, let's go back and take this whole thing and change that, or put that into the messages. So let's call it EVMS equals, so that's how you kind of do the map properties, like what's the key and what will be the value. If employee vaccination, well, let's call it management system, perhaps. Okay. So now how do you change this? Well, you go back here, and the way you reference it is pretty simple. You could just do this. So kind of like 2 brackets inside that, and then you specify exactly what's the name of your identifier is. So with a pound sign. So you'd say something like pound sign this. Oops. That EVMS. And let's save that. And let's see if that shows up. It will be right here, the title. Didn't show up. Alright, let's see why that would be. Messages, I think we typed it right. I'm going to go ahead and stop this. Maybe I have to reload everything because it doesn't see it. So I'm going to stop the server, and let's go ahead, highlight this EVMS application, right click, and run this again. Okay, it's up. Let's go ahead and refresh now. Looks like it got loaded, as you can see. So it loaded from the properties file now. So I'm going to go ahead and change all of the other places. For example, all of these, vaccination type, administration, all of these. So here, you do the same thing and call it EVMS. Pound sign, open, and close. And let's say administration, we're going to call it something like admin. So as soon as we say that, we need to add something like that. So admin equals this. Then we got something called vaccination type and vaccination types. Well, probably vaccination types is enough. So add vaccination types. Vaccine type. Let's change it to that. Now there are multiple ways of doing this. Of course, one way is you could put that 2 brackets, but you could also do something like this. Time-lapse has something called th text, and inside that you could, if you put the exact same thing but with the scriptlet or expression language like this, using this, that also works. Okay, so, and then same thing here. I could do, I'm just going to copy this and paste it right here. Oops, not there, right here. So change text this, and I can get rid of that, and it automatically will replace the text inside it. And a couple of more maybe for name and description that I'll change. So that would be name, that would be description. So let's say I could do th text, say name, copy that, and do a description, DVSCR. So nothing is hard coded in here. So let's go ahead and add those in the properties file. So say name equals nothing but a name. R is equal to description. Alright, all that, and I think that's what we call the description. Yes, yeah. Okay, good. So let's go back and make sure we didn't break anything. Well, it looks like there's an error. Of course, when you look at the error, if you go to the details, it says something like this, line 30, column 56. So when I look at line 30, column 56, which is kind of right here, column 56, it basically says that you didn't put anything here. Okay, so think I missed this piece, so this is where I should put the vaccination type, I think. I'll go ahead and put that in here, save that, go back. There you go, everything looks good now, so all of the texts are back and nothing is hard-coded. Okay, I think that's about it for today. We learned how to make this nice background images and custom drop-down menu with the colors, and of course when I click on that it comes back here. Hope to see you next time for part 5. Part 5 will be fun. We will actually install the MySQL database and install the table for this and hook this page up with the actual database with Spring Boot and Hibernate. I'll put this part 4 code in the GitHub as I did in part 3, and I'll put the GitHub link in the description below. So hope to see you next time. Thanks, bye.